Welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing something totally unique and honestly incredibly exciting on this explainer. We're looking at a topic today that stems from something strikingly minimal. In fact, it is exactly 6 words long. No way, right? But within those 6 short words lies this vast, fascinating framework about how we actually process and consume global icons. We're going to set the stage for a meta-analytical deconstruction of a single powerful phrase. It's kind of like a journey into the anatomy of fame, the structure of storytelling, and the sheer mechanics of language.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our complete focus for today, precisely as it appears. Lionel Messi Biography in English. I want you to just sit with that for a second. It's not some massive paragraph. It's a pure statement of intent, a highly specific demand for information. We're going to deliberately pace ourselves today, really letting the sheer weight and the implications of these 6 words settle into our minds. Because, this isn't just about a famous athlete. It's literally a blueprint for how humanity archives and translates greatness for the masses.
The subject and the structure. So, to truly understand what this phrase represents, we've got to dissect its anatomy to see how it operates as this tightly unified piece of global communication. We can actually separate this phrase into 3 distinct intersecting structural steps. Step 1 is Lionel Messi, representing the person. Step 2 is biography, representing the genre. And step 3 is in English, representing the medium. Think of this whole thing like a giant filtering process. A raw, messy human life goes in at the top, gets shaped into a highly specific narrative format, and is then broadcast through a specific linguistic lens to the rest of the world.
Let's zoom in on that very first layer, the subject, Lionel Messi. Now, notice what is beautifully absent here. This simple query offers 0 dates of birth, no statistics, no club affiliations, honestly, not even a single mention of the sport of soccer. Why? Well, because the subject is an Argentinian icon, a global sports legend, a name requiring absolutely no introduction. Here, the name acts as a monumental, universal identifier. The name alone carries the entire weight of his history. It just assumes you already know the magic, right? You are just here for the documentation of it.
Part 2. The biographical lens.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the very definition of a biography, an account of someone's life written by someone else. Think about the profound transition happening within this concept. We are taking a lived, dynamic, breathing life, a life full of unpredictable movement, emotion, and spontaneity, and we're freezing it into a static, documented narrative. It's a fundamental shift from a life in action to a life on the record.
Let's just isolate that single word for a second. Biography. Why do we seek this out? Why does society feel this compelling, almost insatiable need to package and consume the lives of our cultural icons? I think it's because we want to decode genius. We want a structured beginning, a middle, and an end to something that, in reality, was completely chaotic and organic. The presence of the word biography here is basically humanity's demand for order and narrative satisfaction.
Part 3. The power of English.
So, on one side, we have the lived life, which inherently exists within a Spanish-speaking Argentine context. And against that, we have the packaged story, deliberately placed in an English context. The demand isn't just for any story, it's for a story specifically in English. This highlights a really stark contrast between the deep, localized cultural roots of the subject and the massive globalization implied by documenting his legacy in the world's most dominant lingua franca.
Which kind of forces us to pause and ask this absolutely vital question. What gets lost in translation? Seriously, when you take a life lived in the unique rhythms of Argentina and filter it completely through an Anglophone medium, what cultural nuances are just stripped away? Do the natural cadences of his native tongue or the deeply local context of his upbringing actually survive the shift into English? It's a real critical thing to consider about how we consume the histories of global figures.
So, the crucial point is understanding the sheer impact of those 2 final words. This is about universal accessibility, it's about global sports media packaging, and it is about cementing a legacy worldwide. Those 2 words, in English, completely transform a deeply personal, localized history into a globally accessible commodity. It takes a hero of a very specific culture and purposefully offers him up for worldwide consumption. It's a real game changer.
Part 4. A global legacy. Let's move to and see how this builds across a conceptual timeline. It begins with lived existence, the raw, unedited reality of the person. That existence is then subjected to biographical packaging, structuring the man into a digestible story. And finally, it undergoes English translation,
turning that structured story into a universal, global product. This timeline shows us exactly how a global sports icon story is processed for the world, step by step, filter by filter.
And this brilliantly illustrates the full weight of this simple phrase. Let's look at those 6 words just one last time. Lionel Messi Biography in English. You know, it's no longer just a simple phrase or a basic query to us now. It's layered with all this deep, meta-analytical meaning we've constructed throughout this explainer. It stands as this fascinating monument to how human greatness is identified, how it's structured into a narrative, and how it is ultimately translated for global consumption.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder. When a life is translated, when it's uprooted from its native soil, neatly structured by a biographer, and converted into a global language, whose story does it ultimately become? Does it still belong to the icon who lived it, or does it now belong to the global audience consuming it? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the profound architecture of a single phrase. Keep questioning the layers behind the information you consume, and I will see you in the next explainer.